Hello, welcome to another episode of COVEN. My name is Imperial. I play for black metal band Elcrost, and I also co-run the label House of Igra with other members of Elcrost as well. We are a black metal label based in Hanoi, Vietnam. And welcome to our the second episode of our podcast. Well, it has been more than a year since the first episode. Well, the first one was aired, I think, in January of 2022, and now it is March of 2023. So it has been more than a year. So what has happened in those years? In 1 year of House of Igra, I would say it has been quite a busy year for us. It's the first year that we actually operate as a label fully. We have 3 different releases. At the beginning of the years, we received our shares of the CDs from Elcrost from Pest Production, a label in China, and after that, we re-released the definitive editions, the full-length album of VOM, A Wonder Illuminati. And we did that in July, and then 2 months later in September we released Lockhart, which is a gothic electronic wave project. Lockhart's album's called Weepers of the Moon. And finally, towards the end of the year, we have our biggest release of 2022, which is As Darkness Burned by Rot, a very, very long-running black metal band from the south, from Ho Chi Minh City. And on top of all those releases, we also have been one of the few promoters for extreme metal in Hanoi. We put out a lot of shows with local bands, small shows and big shows. But for last year, we put out 6 different shows, and it has been quite busy. But it has been very fun. So that explains the absence of this podcast. And also, towards the end of last year, we have members of the scene also did a podcast called Arbitrary Night, and he happens to be here with us as well. And we will get to the introductions of them in a few minutes. So, I mean, with another new podcast, I feel like there's a less reason for me to do this, Coven series. And also, one reason why is, I want to do Covens. The main reason is to have a platform for all the local artists to talk about their new album. But since last year, we only released 3 albums, and Vong was very secretive, so he didn't want us to talk. Lockhart was also, he also had his own problems, so we cannot do interview together. So finally, we have to do it this time with Leukotomy. So that is the end of my introductions, and now let's get to the band. So, I want to introduce you guys to our guests of today. We have Leukotomy, a new black metal band from Hanoi, Vietnam. And I would let you guys take the stage. Please introduce yourself and your roles within the band.
Hi, my name is Don. For the band, for this album that we are going to release, in particular, I'm going to I play bass, program drums, some part of keyboards, and provide some samples and ambience and noise. Along the line, you can find some of my tidbits in the album, which is going to be released on March 17th, I guess. And furthermore, when the album is going to finish, I also did a majority of mixing and post-production as well, and I really like it. So, hello.
Hi. Hello, folks. I'm Morbid. I am the frontman guitarist, and I also the main writer and lyricist for Leukotomy. As Dawn mentioned, our album Eternal Path to Eden will be out on March 17th. 2023. So yeah, please check it out when it's out.
Great. So let's get right on it. So what is the circumstances behind the foundations of Leukotomy? how the band was found, and when.
Well, back in 2020, well, right before Dom had to leave Vietnam, he asked me if I want to do a recording project with him. So yeah, I said yeah, let's do it. So yeah, during October we decided to work on a black metal project, and on the eve of Halloween that year, uh, we decided the name of Leukotomy. That's how Leukotomy was born.
Hmm.
I also remember it to be a very impromptu decision as well because there's a pretty hilarious anecdote where so I was at the airport and I was just checking random black metal bands and it was just spontaneously coming out of my head that I want to create a black metal project and I texted him because I knew that he has been working. I text Morbid because I know that he has been working on music for quite a long time and he has not been in a band and also I might say that it is also from the formation of Elcrost and other bands in Hanoi back then that motivated us to create this recording project.
Hmm. And what is the why choose the name Leukotomy? Is there like a specific meanings behind that name?
Well,
It, it,
we were mixing between names, and we finally like actually uh, it was in the case of something like my mental state and maybe Zoom's too, maybe Dom's too. So we want to pick something that kind of reflects like the peak mental like breakdown.
Hmm.
So yeah, maybe Lobotomy. There's already a band named Lobotomy, so yeah, we decided to name ourselves Lobotomy, which means the same.
So Don, you talk about how Elcrost is also one of the reasons that inspire you to start a band. And I would something that I want to ask is, as young guys from the scene at that point, how do you perceive the so-called metal scene in Vietnam at that point, and what do you think about it?
well, I would say that the timing is not perfect back then because somewhat the rise of the metal scene collides with the pandemic, which in some countries is perceived as already end.
Hmm.
But I would say that back then there were some there were some metal acts that has already giving signs of new products and more eclectic live performances.
Hmm.
I would say that the first show, one of the first show I had ever attended in HRC
Hmm.
was was actually it was Bloodshed, their debut show, but it was 2 years prior to the formation of both Leukotomy and Elcrost. And after Bloodshed, there were a number of bands doing recording and teasing live performances as well. So I would say that there were signs of a blossoming scene.
When you start Leukotomy, you are you aware of the metal scene in Hanoi at that time?
Um, to be honest, I don't. I didn't. I didn't. Back then, I was working with like different projects, but I'm kind of a bedroom guitarist.
Ooh.
I practice a lot. I record myself, but to like engage with the whole scene, I didn't. Like I noticed there are bands, especially long when they release their demo. So I know about them, but I don't engage or like know anybody back then.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you guys choose black metal as a starting point, So at that point, which is 2020, so it has been around 3 years since that. But I will get to like the influence of what or the black metal that you listen to right these days later. But at the starting point, what were the bands that you guys listened to, and what were the bands that influenced you when you say, "Oh, I want to start a black metal. I want to sound like these band."
Well, oh, yeah, go on, you can say.
Yeah, I would say the path that we chose this particular direction is it was a very interesting story as well. So back then, when Morbid sent his first demo, uh, we were actually going to write and produce it in a rather first wave approach. So you would play bands with very primitive playing, Sepultura and I don't know, Venom, Battery, along that line. But then we realized that the demo that we were working on, it has this melodic sensibility. I'm not going to say better, but it's different from first wave music. So we decided to work on a rather second wave approach.
Yeah.
One of the first bands that we actually both listened to and wanted to have an influence on our music were Mayhem. Yeah, you know Mayhem, very grand, very big sounding, very straightforward black metal. That's what.
Yeah, the first album series. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also when we were working on our demos, we actually came up with the idea of using additional elements. So ambient and extra soundscape and noise, everything along.
Oh, yeah.
And let me see. But we know that our musical approach is kind of different. But there's something that we all agree that we are going to have some experimental aspects in our music as well. Yeah.
And Morbid, do you have anything to add to the like other than Mayhem? Like, what else would you say are like the other influence to Leukotomy at that stage of the band?
At that stage, let's say it's during the writing of our first album. To be honest, the writing process of this album was being split into like periods, like different periods of time. So yeah, what Dom said was the first period when we work on some tracks like Deception, Union, or even Reminisce. But for the rest, our taste changed a little bit, and to like bands like I would love to mention Psy, a black metal band, an avant-garde black metal band from Japan. Those guys influence us a lot too. So yeah.
And to follow the decision that combining ambient and experimental as well as noise elements in our albums, it actually came from outsider music that we were listening to at that time as well. So I don't know about Morbid, but some of my influences include the work of Brian Eno, Hijo Kaidan, the Japanese noise artist, and that and black metal albums that included severe experimental elements like Norbert Tongues, Spectre, a band from France, and everything along that line. That we decided to put some materials of experimental music in our album.
Yeah, and I would say, if I may add, have a listen to the album and watch as the band Leukotomy grow for the past 2 years. What I find interesting about the early stage of the band, and it's kind of have like make me linked to the early stage of the second wave of black metal in Norway, as well, is that you guys like the young guys in Norway, right? You guys are also very like young guys and have already a lot of musical background before, with like Don would say, with your experimental or your avant-garde kind of interests, and I would say Morbid, you also have an interest, like you said before, that you are like a bedroom guitarist, but you also have interest with like shredding and like virtuoso kind of guitars, right? And how you have those background and you combine with black metal to form your own identity. I think that's really interesting, and how it kind of parallels with when you compare with guys like like Isan, or like Gal, or like Gam, like those second wave guys.
Yeah, exactly. And we try not to sway too far from the roots of black metal, which is old school rock and roll instruments, so bass, vocals, guitars, and drums. We believe that the addition of keyboards and soundscape only add a texture and atmosphere to the whole album. We don't want it to be the main structure of the record.
So, welcome back. Like Morbid and Don has said before, the newest Leukotomy albums, called Eternal Path to Eden, is coming out through House of Igra on March 17th, which is by this time of the recording less than 10 days. Very exciting. And also, you guys have released the latest, your debut single, taken from the album, called Disintegration. And it has been more than a week since the release date. Is it? Yes. So, how is the reception so far?
I sent it to some of my friends. Not some of them also work in music, and some of them are just interested in the music as a whole. So far, the reception I received, I think it's quite good. Some of them are actually overwhelming, as I might say. There are some admiration, I think, and praises for the songwriting, the keyboard parts, and the production. Also, some more critical reception goes further into the mixing, the production, and drumming, everything along that line. But I would say that it's pretty good for a debut single.
And Disintegration is a very long track. It's around more than 10 minutes. So, what's the But what's the reason behind the choice of that song as the single?
Well, I think when we take that song, initially we're choosing something that can reflect that stage of the band. Yeah, first stage of songwriting of Leukotomy. So I think Disintegration is a candidate for encapsulating the sound of Leukotomy during the.
Also, it's a technical reason. So a little bit of spoiler, but actually our album, there are several songs that connect to each other in order to portray a common theme. So Morbid and I, we decided that if we take one of those songs to be a single, it will be too abrupt, and it would not portray the theme as we initially planned. So we picked the
exactly.
I would say least and the most so Disintegration is a song that when you take it out, it's not really connected to any song in an album. Either flow, so we take it out and make it our single.
And I would say, I would add that, from a listener's standpoint, I think it's a very varied song. It's a song that has a lot of elements to it. It has, very kind of anguish screaming vocals. It has very kind of relentless tremolo sections, like the main riff, very relentless tremolo, and it has also the key parts and also some samples. There's some shredding guitars, and it's kind of encapsulate everything I would say that people expect about Leukotomy in one package. So and yeah, so Disintegrations opens kind of leads the way to the album. So Eternal Path to Eden's. Let's talk about the album now. First of all, the title. Why do you guys choose Eternal Path to Eden as the title?
Well, the name Eternal Path to Eden is one of the suggestions that you suggested for the album. Initially, Don and I were thinking of making a self-titled album or an album without name. Yeah. Back in the like demo stage, we had a guy in scene who who made us an artwork, and we just like slapped our logo under the artwork, like the artwork of the album mission of Unfell, something like that. But yeah, initially we didn't want to name our album, or just want to leave it as a subtitle. So, but after a lot of reconsideration, we decided to choose a name, and yeah, you have to pick a name for an album, and we decided to choose Eternal Path to Eden.
I think that we have like a list of stuff. We have like a group chat where we brainstorm some ideas. There's some really long names.
Yeah, really long.
Yeah, and I think that's why I choose Eternal Path to Eden, and I think that it kind of resonated with the album. Is it kind of represent the two aspects of the album, where it's Eden as like a very positive kind of like a paradise, like equation, and then you have the eternal path, which means that it's something that is very arduous. It's very painful. And speak about arduous. So you guys were formed in 2020, and finally, after nearly 3 years, the album is being released next week. So what's the reason behind such a long gap, for this album?
Well, we would say that during the writing and recording process, Morbid and I have some, personal issues of our own that took time to process and to finally go through with it. Honestly, there were times that I actually figured we might not be able to complete this album in the early future. But after a while of working and writing new material for the album, we motivated each other with the help of producer, which is you, Imperial, and we are very. I would say that we are very grateful for your appearance as our producer. And about the recording process, well, it actually did not take much time for me because the bass recording didn't take too much time, and drums programming finished kind of right after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Morbid, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, like Dom said, during the writing process of the album, both of us have our struggles with personal issues. There were times that personally I thought we couldn't finish this album, but yeah, we somehow made it through. I think the day that made me myself decide to like put all my heart into this album is the day that I first talked to you, and yeah, asked me to come to your house. We talk about the written tracks, and he urged me to like finish the album. So yeah, I worked on my personal issues, and I like decided to drop other projects that I'm working on, so I can fully focus on this album and finish it. So that was the working process. On recording techniques itself, I'm not very experienced, so it did took me a while to get used to it, and yeah, to like record my parts of the album.
Yeah. And full transparency, so the album is made with me as the producer, and also with another guy called Nemo as the guy who also helped out with the sound and also did the master as well. So you mentioned before that the album exists in two versions, sort of. The versions that we will finally listen to in next week, the final like official full length album versions, and there's also a demo versions. And I think that one was like the first one that you showed me, and that's one that you record by yourself. Yeah, and I think when I first heard it, what strikes me the most is there's just so many great ideas into it, and that's why I feel like I feel the need to commit to helping you guys with it. And of course, like the recording process is not just due to any of like due to like the recording process is long, but not solely because of the recording, right? Because if you calculate, we actually spend not that much time recording. But I think it's mostly like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, is we did shows, like Leukotomy function as a band, so we just it's not touring per se, but we did shows, and to do shows you have to do rehearsal, takes a lot of time, and I also was producing for Rod at the same time, so there was a lot of start stop and a lot of things that kind of prevent the album from being made smoothly, but finally we are here, and we are only less than 1 week away from the release date. And but I remember that the the recording of the guitar took like months to make. I think it took so long to do, but for vocals, it only took 1 day. Yeah, which surprised me. I remember that I thought that we had to do vocals for like 2 weeks because I imagined that it would destroy someone's voice. But then I think I read an article by Dillinger Escape Plan, and then the lead vocalist he said that he just recorded the voice in like 1 day. So we were like, what? Let's just do everything in 1 day, and we did. Yeah. And I also remember that it was very fun to do that because there was a lot of ideas that come like spontaneously. There was a yeah. Do you remember the part at towards the end of Disintegration?
Yeah, like the sample part. Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So basically, we feel like the album was missing something, so we want to add something to it. So we just look up like Charles Baudelaire, like poetry, find the most evil sounding part to put into it. So yeah. So we have mentioned that the album exists in the demo format and the final album format. So from those two, like formats, what is like the changes that you guys make in between?
Well, for me, it is I want to polish it. So I want to go into every single detail. You know that the demo exists before, and I see it as a spine for additional improvements. So I want drums at this part. It has to have symbols at this part, and it has to have this groove at this spectacular part. That's the improvements I want to include in the final version. Also with the bass, I want to add some more fills and add some interesting ideas to it. aside from the spine that I have already wrote for the rhythm section.
Mhm.
And there's another interesting story as well. So there's a song called Carnage
Mhm.
in the album. And when I remember that day that you guys were finishing with the guitar recording, and I was listening to Tackle Negative, and there's this organ sound that I feel really interesting in. It has this very gothic-esque vibe,
Mhm.
gothic-esque vibe into it. So that's when I come with a new organ part, although just a textual part for
Mhm.
Carnage. That's the improvement that we want to include in our final version. Some of it might be ideas that came out very spontaneously, but
Mhm.
it's like a cherry on top for the whole album as well.
Mhm.
And some of the improvements also came in within the production process, which I
Mhm.
will mention later.
Yeah. So, you have mentioned that you have just said that like the changes between the demos and the final versions comes within the recording process and within the finalizing process. But something that I'm also interested in and asking Morbid is that you guys also play this song live. You guys during the recording process, right? So do you think that by playing this song live and by testing that out in with an audience, does it affect the final versions? That when you go back to the studio, it makes you want to change some part or make you want to streamline some parts?
It actually did happen. Yeah. So basically, on the 27th of March, 2022, Leukotomy played our first our debut performance
Mm,
at a event called Master One.
yeah.
So back then we had this drummer named Agni,
Mm,
and he was a very young and talented drummer. So basically, when we play our songs live, I think that his playing, his skills that kind of influence our drumming for the album a
mm,
bit. Don't you think so?
Yeah, in a way, and the most transparent improvement, I would say, it's the tempo.
mm,
Yeah,
So yeah, so when we rehearse, we realize for particular songs like Disintegration and Carnage, we
yeah, they're a bit too much slow.
yeah, and I would say drumming as well. It's not
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
black metal, so we increase the tempo up a little bit,
yeah.
and I think it works wonders. And it's better in an album concept as well, not just a live setting.
Because I remember that when me and Morbid we did the recording, we were like, man, this it's so comical in a sense that it's just so sped up. It's just like, oh god, we have to like met the metronome. But
Yeah,
then
back then, yeah,
yeah,
back then I just took it fast.
yeah,
So basically, I had to spend like weeks, even months, to like practice
yeah,
playing in that pitch.
yeah. And I as from a producer standpoint, I still think that the best song that you perform on that album is Carnage. Which surprised, like very surprising, because I remember that okay, it's a long song, it's gonna be hard, like it's gonna like, and it's so fast, it's gonna be like a long recording process. But I remember that you just did most of them one take, like okay, record, and then it's like, it's quite easy, and then record, and then we just finish the two guitar tracks.
Yeah, basically, the song that took the most time to like record was Disintegration because there was so much like awkward rhythm
Yeah,
parts. Yeah, I think those awkward rhythm parts is what took me so much time to do.
but I think that in a way it's kind of interesting because you guys like one thing from the demos days, I'm gonna refer it as the demos days, but one thing like that you as I would say as the main songwriter or as like the riff writers for those demos days, is that you would play without metronome, and that would help with making your riff kind of freeform in a sense that you don't have to be like it has to be 4/4, it has to be 8/8, but you can do weird time signature.
Yeah. So yeah.
And I would say that's actually interesting because when you listen to guys from the second wave, like bands from the second wave, right? They would do that a lot. People don't actually notice because people would actually like and something that even Celtic Frost, like a very primitive band, would do a lot. If you listen to like a lot of riff in I forgot the album for some reason, but like the album with like Circle of Tyrants, that one. There's a lot of riff, like that song called the Usurper. There's like a breakdown part at the intro that sounds very weird. Like there's a riff that sticks out because it's not in 4/4. And if you listen to Mayhem, he like Euronymous did the same with like Fury of Fog, and Satyricon, one of their best songs, which is Mother North. The intro riff is also not 4/4. It stick out like the last part, and I think Leukotomy also embraced that spirit of the second wave where you guys just fuck the 4/4 and you just do some weird things in the middle as a transition, but it works.
And if you listen to some second wave bands, some second wave songs, you will see that the tempo kind of drops.
Yeah.
As well.
During the recording, yeah.
Which is not oh, continue, yeah.
Basically with some So for the first album, we play around 4/4, but we hit a lot. Like we do a lot of different shit like on the fly.
Let's talk about the musical aspect of Eternal Path to Eden. We have discussed before about the start of the band and how you guys are influenced by Psy. But then you did mention that the writing process for the album is divided into two different phases, right? So what kind of contributes to these divisions between these phases?
I think the main reason why the writing process was being divided into like different periods is because of it's because of time. It's because of time. So basically, we did mention that we were struggling with personal issues. So that's the main reason why it was divided.
And so the first phase is influenced by Mayhem, I would say, and then the second one is by Psy, which is a very interesting choice. What kind of draws you into the sound of Psy?
I think the main thing about Psy that like captured my thoughts there. I think is the way of experimenting with black metal. They did do a lot of stuff, but weird for black metal, and I love that.
Yeah, I also want to add that with Psy, I always liked them a lot, especially the first phase of the band, not the later phase. But what I liked about them more than bands like Emperor, like symphonic band, is that it's like Emperor. They always have this attitude that we're so educated, beyond this genre, so we're gonna add like neoclassical elements to make like it more fancier, I think. But with Psy, they kind of embrace black metal more, and they approach and they approach these elements in a more kind of primitive way, I think.
That sounds a bit more like primitive.
Yeah, Don?
Yeah, I was saying that especially at the first phase of Psy as well, so they have a lot of experimental instrumentation around the music, but if you listen to the riffs, it's still black metal riffs. It still has a lot of melodic sensibilities which belongs to black metal in it. It's not just noodling with experimental. It still has a core within the music. That's what I love about, especially Psy. I would say the first few years, few albums.
I think like there's an example that we could see, which is for Emperor in the Night Side Eclipse, their debut album. There's a song called Beyond the Vast Forest, That's actually a song being re-recorded from the previous demo called My Empire's Doom. And the difference between those two is that there's this kind of punky beats or punky versions, and they just add like synth on top in the final versions, and it just sounds out of place, right?
So basically, yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, with Psy, in Scorn Defeat, there's a song called The Nail. I think it's the Nail. It's like the first song, I think, or like the second song. But if you listen to like there's a compilation called Eastern Darkness that Psy just released. Basically, a compilation of all their old demos before Scorn Defeat. There's an old versions of The Nail. It's actually just the first wave black metal. It's just relentless, but you can still hear the melodies in it. And in the final versions, when they add the half C chord on top, it makes sense. I think it fits perfectly. Like it just doesn't feel like, oh, it's just something tack on to make it more sound changes. And I think that happens with Leukotomy as well. When you listen to some demos, to like the demo days of Leukotomy, and then you listen to like the new versions, the add-on makes sense. It sounds natural in the progressions of how you guys listen to music.
Yeah.
And so the albums has 9 tracks, and it comprised of multiple elements of noise, of ambience, of black metals, but in terms of the black metal of the albums, I feel like there's more than just Psy or more than just mayhem, because there are 2 tracks actually that is a bit more experimenting. Can you elaborate more on these 2 tracks?
Which?
I would say 3 tracks. So we have the ambient piece, which is called Reminiscent, the 5th track of the albums, and then the 2 kind of ending song, which is Chimera and Melancholy.
Yeah.
Didn't you want to talk about Reminiscence?
Sure. Reminiscence came as an idea that I want to combine elements of ambient and noise into at least a track in the album. Initially it was me. I create a soundscape based on ambient, and Morbid gave his input by some samples of piano and some voice recordings of I would say schizophrenic patients. Yeah, and I want to. My intention is to create a somewhat of an interlude between 2 distinctive parts of the album. I don't want the album to just I don't want it to flow like just any black metal album with just brutal tracks after brutal tracks.
Yeah.
We have a rest in between so that the flow is more cinematic and more accessible to a number of people. The track begins with a very abrasive noise part, and it starts to fade into a more melancholic ambient part. I want to create. That part is actually tied. It has a bond with the concept, which we will elaborate later. But that's the idea of that song.
Manifold wedding mark, but it was played in minor key, so it feels like a wedding, but in a way it's not a wedding. Sorry, but
yeah. And with Chimera, like what's the reason why? What's the reason of doing this kind of? I would say for people who hasn't listened to that song, I would describe it as a very black metal Agalov ballads with very like J-rock ending solo. Yeah, like very ex-Japan kind of glamorous solo in the end.
So Chimera is actually a song that I wrote back in 2018. And it was it was an alternative rock kind of song, like melody. So, but when we work on the writing process of Eternal Path to Eden, in that specific part of the story, I want to have a song that is more, I don't know, melancholic and a bit more like soft. I don't know, to differentiate the flow of the album. So I reused the material in one of my old tracks. So into the camera.
I remember a story. So back then, I was actually at Imperial's place when Morbid sent me the song, which is now Chimera, and I listened to the demo version, and I think that it's really good, and it actually fits in the album. Like, you know how United or Face of Milena fits in Still Life.
Yeah.
The open album, yeah. I want to have that acoustic track in the album as well, but Morbid told me that the lyrics, it's actually about love, and I just told him to just change the lyrics because I feel like this song fits the album. Yeah.
To fit into the album.
He actually wrote that song in its entirety. I just provide bass.
Yeah. And then kind of the album closure in a way, which is Melancholy, the 8th track. It's something to describe it, to listener who will listen to it, hopefully, next week, is that it's a dialogue-inspired DSPM piece.
Yeah. Kind of. Again, Melancholy is also a track that I worked on previously. I wrote the first material of Melancholy back in 2019. Yeah, and back then it was just the first part of the track. Should I spoil it?
Yeah. I think you can just describe it vividly.
Yeah. So basically, the demo of the song is basically just acoustic guitar with two parts, with acoustic guitar, and the other part is just a distorted guitar chord progression. So, but when we work on Melancholy, I decided to switch the to like a piano keyboard section. Yeah, it changed up a little bit. But yeah, basically, that track is influenced by dialects and nocturnal depression. Yeah.
So we have talked about these, hanging albatross, which is the concept a lot. So can you give us a brief, but but like a non-spoilery way about the concept of the album?
Well, basically the concept is about a man and a woman who face a atrocity and were split up. The man had to struggle with his thoughts, with his negative thoughts, and I don't know how not to spoil this, but basically they reunite at the end.
Okay. Yeah.
So I can also say that it incorporates some elements of our lives as well that we experience. Additionally, I think Morbid not more than once told me that some fragments of the story actually is influenced by a tragic event that he witnesses in real life.
Yeah. And you guys both work on the concept together, right?
Actually, he wrote. It's Morbid who mainly wrote the concept. I just add details like which church should be burned, where should he die,
Okay, so
overall atmosphere of the
it also involved
yeah,
church burning. So yes,
Yeah.
very satanic, very black metal. Spoiler. Yeah.
Spoiler.
But it's a concept that Morbid developed, but I think it's some. But you guys both write the lyrics, right? Because I think Morbid you write for most of the song, but Disintegration is written by Don.
Yeah, the lyrics of Disintegration is basically written by Don. Yeah.
It was inspired by The Crow.
Ah,
I also read the comic, and there's just some particular frame that inspired me. It's related to the movie. You can see that bit in the lyrics.
during like the recording process, like is the concept you already have like in concrete beforehand, and then you map out the whole albums, and then you map out that it will have like this many chapters, and it will have like this many songs, and you write song according to that, or it's something that you develop side by side together, like because there's like three aspects, right? The concept, the lyrics, and the music. Like what comes first, or it all comes together simultaneously?
And the concept is what came first.
Mm.
So basically, I have this concept, and I said to Don, like back in November 2020, right? So basically, that I want to like do. I told him what if he liked it, and then we decided to like work around the concept. So basically, yeah, we split the concept into different like chapters. And then we write the music, and the lyrics are supposed to tell the story of that chapter.
It's also at times a mixed process, so you understand that this album has a flow.
Yeah.
But, there are some parts of the concept and the music. It doesn't. It does not collide. So there's this specific part that we want to incorporate a specific event of the concept into it. But the music is already written, and we like the music already, so we have to have new version of the concept, but it's usually marginal fixed.
Yeah.
And when writing the lyrics or for this concept, like, do you have any source of inspiration, whether it's be film, televisions, or through literature?
Well, like Don said, the lyrics for this generation that you wrote is basically like influenced by the Crow. It's for my part. I'm a big poetry fan, so yeah, a lot of my lyrics are my self-written poetry or like influenced by people's like famous poets.
So, can you name some of the poets that influenced your writing style?
I don't know. I'm more into like Vietnamese poets.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically I can name like Han Ngọc Tử or Xuân Diệu. But in terms of like English writing lyrics, yeah, I basically transform those energy into English, and yeah, write around it. There were we sample a lot of like poetry reading. Like in the first track, the intro, it was a poetry by Lang Lee, and yeah, as you mentioned, this version also have a poetry sample part. Yeah. So basically, our lyrics are mostly poems. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the poetry aspect of it is what also draws me to the album, where because I for Elcrost I also work on the concept and I also work on the lyrics as well. So I'm very easy to draw into like imagery or poetic kind of like artsy stuff. So yeah, with Leukotomy, I remember that when I read the lyrics, there's this kind of feeling of decadence to it, because all the poets that you mentioned, one of them, Sun Tzu, he's like one of the few Vietnamese decadence writer, I would say. Let's talk about the last aspect of Eternal Path to Eden, which is the production. And I think that is something that both of you guys can speak more about it. Is like because the album is produced, like I'm the one who produced it, but I mostly do like the nitty gritty of like the recording and then the organizing and like make sure that the albums come out. And but I would say in terms of the sound wise, to define the sound, it's you guys because the album is mixed by both of you. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. And how is the process work? How do you like mix like your part, or you mix your own part, or you sit together and mix together, or how does it work?
Well, you
Initially, the plan was to give all of our recordings to Nemo Lockhart, and
Mm.
he will have mixing, but there were some, I would say, he's kind of busy at that time, so, and he has tight schedule, I think, so
Mm.
we had to figure out how to mix our parts ourselves.
Mm.
Uh, we Morbid did to mix his parts like guitars and vocals,
Mm.
and I did beside bass and drums, I did mix the I would say that the whole still image of the whole mix. I would work on that as well as volume scaling and balancing.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, when I finished with the production and mixing, I realized that I really loved it. I really went into the smallest details and scrutinized them so that it fits my liking the most. So for each part, I have a sonical preference and
Mm.
stereo image of my own for all instruments. It's kind of lucky that from April to till this day, I went to a number of metal shows in Germany, and I think that's where I acquired some of my sonical preference
Mm.
for the whole mix. For example, the drums. I envisioned it to be that although it's all program drums, as you might know,
Mm.
but I envisioned it to be in a very large hall, like you can imagine the Brickhallen hall in Norway, where Mayhem record their mysteries from Satanas.
Mm.
To get most, I want the drums to be very big sounding, very triumphant,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I wanted to have this natural reverb of a sanctuary.
Mm.
That's what I envisioned in my mind, and I try to mix accordingly. And I also want to have the most details in the mixing.
Mm.
So I mix accordingly to the smallest details, like every single symbol. It has to sound this way
Mm.
during the mix. And during which part of the song that this hi-hat must sound louder than the snare, and which part the snare and the kick must be louder in order to fit in with the whole mix.
Mm.
And the same goes with bass and keyboards. So, for example, in the song Disintegration, there are keyboard parts, and obviously we would want the keyboard because it doesn't appear much in the song.
Mm.
We want it to be of high clarity, but yeah, it and I also add a little more elements to Morbid's mix in order to fit in with the whole mix. So he did mix the guitar with distortion and to hear the vocals. According to which song that I add a little more elements, like compress a little bit at this part, add a little bit more distortion at this part, so that everything it has to fit my vision, and I cannot call it a day when something just doesn't fit
Mm.
where I want it to be. So it's a very, I would say, it's a very surgical process
Mm.
to each and every element of the mix, because I know that with black metal, it has this dissonance quality, and it has this raw aesthetic, but it just irritates me
Mm-hmm.
a lot when people just recorded a poorly produced demo
Mm-hmm.
and put it out like as a product, although it's not finished. That's what really bothers me. So I want to went every single detail, every song, every song in the album must have a flow and which part it needs to stop for how many seconds. I have to plan it all in my head
Mm-hmm.
so that it fits my post-production process.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a an approach I learned from DG of Mr. Ming.
Mm.
Yeah, he is the producer for Mr. Ming in a lot of Icelandic bands.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an anecdote that I still remember, and I consider it to be a a lesson that I will bear in mind.
Yeah.
So one day he sits with Tori of Sparky Dowdy, another Icelandic black metal band, and he gave Tori a demo of the new Mr. Ming. Although, and he did it all by himself, although it's a demonstration, but everything is mixed properly.
Mm.
Everything is like, it's like you can put it out as a product already tomorrow, but it's only a demonstration. So that level of scrutinizing and work ethic is what I really admire from him. And that's the approach I want to be in, not just Eternal Pathway, but every single album that I might have the chance to produce in the future.
Yeah. Oh, I want to add something to the DG story. I think that's quite interesting that you say that because so like a guy like that we often talk about is Nemo Lockhart, right? He's basically like the main producer for Elcrost, and he also produced for a lot of bands for in the label. He also produced for Rots, the latest
Yeah.
album. And one thing that he always like, I'm always amazed by him is that when he sent me demos, it's like the demos is already quite finished. It's like
Okay.
like 80% finished. Like it's just either missing his vocal, or the vocal is there but missing some like on top extra parts. So I think that is also quite nice when you do that because when you meet with your friends, right, like, or anyone that you want to send them the demos, at the same time you don't want to not waste their time, but you feel like the first impression is only once, so
Yeah.
you want to buy that. So oftentimes when I send demos to people, it is what unless I'm like drunk or at like a party and I just feel like how I want to show them. But I feel like if I want to send like a demos for like a in-depth feedback, it has to be like quite finished in the sense that it has to be sounding good, right? So yeah, that's quite interesting for sure.
And it's not just the perception of people around you, but it's how you treat yourself as well.
Yeah.
So you see the writing of yours as a product art. Why would you be careless about it? You cannot just get with the raw aesthetic of metal every time, because although I admit that the raw aesthetic makes black metal, but it has to reach a certain standard. And I also realized that maybe for the first time listeners, it's not just the music that hits them the hardest, but it's also the flow of the album. So I sent the song for a friend of mine, and she actually has a feedback of how this part should be longer. It has more sustain than an abrupt thing. It's a matter of taste, but it does show me one thing, that listener experience does matter, and they do care.
Yeah. And one thing that you say that for this album or for future album, is this your first time working in depth like at this level as like a sound engineering or like a or like a mixer?
Yeah, it's actually the first time, and I have special thanks for Nemo Lockhart and a friend of mine in the scene, which is a synchromancer from the Penguin band. They all have experience before me, and they have shown me quite a lot of few things, a lot of good things.
Yeah.
And
And
a lot of the process is actually you're just noodling with the stuff on a certain level, and somehow it will turn out to be good, or it's accessible to your ears.
what would you guys say are like the albums that kind of influence on the sound of Eternal Path to Eden? Like, what is like when you do it? Of course, when you record your own music, right? Your gears matters and your playing matters, and the ending is not going to sound exactly one to what you desire. But what are like the basis of the sound that you guys try to reach for in terms of like sonic quality wise?
Well, for me, especially the drums, because drum is the most historical. It's like the backbone of the whole album. So, and it's I think it's the hardest thing to mix and produce.
Mm-hmm.
Especially we are only working on a machine drum.
Yeah.
It could be very sterile at times.
Mm-hmm.
So but some of my influences regarding drumming is mayhem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hellhammer.
The albums like The Mysteries, Those Bananas, and Chimera are the albums I always revisit because of the massive drumming quality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for the overall production, I have references from the 2018 album Disintegration from Funeral Mist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
really
the
cool.
2020 album Melino from Aclis.
Mm.
So you can see that it's those albums, very big sounding, clean, but maintains a raw quality and very brute into
Yeah.
it. That's what I want, at least what I want to be influenced by
Mm-hmm.
in the production process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And personally, I really like the mix. Having the chance to listen to the album beforehand, I think that it really elevates the songwritings that's already there. The albums are like everything sounds very balanced with each other. Like the vocal sits on top, how it should be, and also all the keys and all the other elements doesn't feel like it's blurry, like or being like buried under the mix in the background. So I think that you guys have done a really very tremendous job in the production for sure. So we have talked about many aspects of the albums, and in terms of music, in terms of the concept, what I sense in this album is there's this quality of sentimental, like a very like sentiment value to the albums. And with black metal, it's often the genre that is very varied, like very in the sense that you can express multiple things through black metal, right? You have like the war black metal, you have like a more satanic kind of aspect to it, and then you also have like the nature loving of the atmospheric black. And but you guys choose to focus on a very melancholic and sentimental vibes because it's a love story, but it's set under black metal. So do you guys think that the fact that it's a black metal album helps, or the fact that it used this genre as like the base to express this idea, does it help?
I think it's interesting how black metal works as a perfect medium,
Mm.
a perfect form of art for a lot of continuous experiments,
Mm-hmm.
and it could stand alone very well as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we are taking example the Norwegian scene. You see how the first way of Norwegian scene bands like Beat John, Mayhem, Dark Throne, they all of the materials are very raw and very unwelcoming,
Mm-hmm.
especially to newcomers. But after a time, I realized that it still stands as a product of its own. It
Mm-hmm.
works perfectly standalone.
Yeah.
But I would not say a contradiction, but if we if we also look into the Norwegian avant-garde scene, so bands like Dogham's Guard, Fatboons, and they also work. They also have this very experimental inputs in their products, and it still works very well. So I think that sentimental aspect work in black metal because it conveys a lot of our emotion. Well, but to me, I think I have grew up that phase because the more I listen to metal, I believe that yeah, sentimental has a place, but I think that overall black metal should be arrogant. It should be very triumphant, and in a way, it should be a little bit edgy, with its aesthetic and its music. It should be stays arrogant that way. Because actually, when I did Path to Eden, I did not really see the presence of sentimental as a problem because the music turned out good. But yeah, as I told you, I think I might just have pulled up that phase. Yeah.
So, and Morbid?
Well, in terms of the sentimental aspect of the album, like John mentioned, I never thought of it as a problem. I thought of it as a opportunity. Well, to my perspective, black metal is a genre that can be more evolved than was back in the late 90s. But yeah, all the early 90s and the late 80s. Yeah, to my perspective, it shouldn't be bound into just one specific theme. It evolve because to me, black metal is the genre that can express the most.
We use black metal as a tool to express very extreme ideas, and that could also go through our emotions as well. Yeah, and I think that so in a way, it's not like musically, right? But I also treat Leukotomy, like this album, as a DSBM album. But again, not in terms of musically, but in terms of how it kind of like how it kind of use emotion as a basis for like for the listening experience, because you just have to get into that mindset, you have to get into like the story to feel like it makes sense, because a lot apart from the album, if you take that out of context, it could come as a bit cheesy, I would say, but it works perfectly in the context of the albums.
Yeah, and an interesting thing is I think that not only this album conveys any dark emotions like despair and pain and agony, but it also conveys some of the emotions like love and hope, everything along that line. It's combined into a package. So I think it's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah. And I do have a last questions about the albums. We will talk about something else later, but for the album, as a product that has been on in the work for the past 3 years, let's say that, it's a very long recording process. It's a very long writing process, and I'm sure that at this point you guys are different people than who you are when you start out this project. Do you ever feel like you have outgrown the music of the album?
Yeah, even though
You can go first.
well, I was going to say that maybe it's not the music from the album that age, but it's actually us and our perception to music as a whole has changed. Not like negatively, but we have certain different musical tastes to that we are currently enjoying. So as I said before, I have grown to not really enjoy too much sentimental and cheesy in black metal record. Now for black metal, I enjoy what's big sounding, very very unwelcoming to people, and in a way has a tidbit of arrogance. Well, for example, I would say Mr. Ming's newest album, Metabry. You look at the cover; it's very dark, very it portrays a very big building, but it's very unwelcoming, and it's overwhelming and suffocating at the same time. And that's what kind of the music I really enjoy at the moment. And it's not like I don't listen to other genres like pop or indie music, but to a specific genre, I think I want it to be in a specific way that I'm currently accustomed to.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And Morbid?
Uh, I shouldn't be saying that me, myself, or even both me and Don outgrown this album because it's going to be out soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, our music taste changed a lot. It did took like 3 years to finish the song. So yeah, during that time, our taste changed a lot. Yeah. So back then, I was into more like progressive and more like experimental style. But now I'm more into like the straightforward ways of black metal.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say that we evolved or we changed. It's just that I think that it's like a discovery where we discover new parts of ourselves and we discover the new music that we love. It's not like I have totally eradicated that phase back then. It's just I found something new and I figured that I might want to spend some time with it.
Yeah, basically we want to like work on like different style, not like we really hate toward this style of black metal. We still enjoy this album and like related stuff very much. But yeah, to experiment and like work with different style of black metal too.
Yeah. And once again, I think that's something that I think that if you like a genre, like let's say that you like black metal, right? Then that means that you shouldn't listen to one type of black metal. You shouldn't listen to just post black or like just like folk black or atmospheric black. But if you like black metal, then you should listen to every aspect of it to see like the broader pictures, right? You should listen to like the Swedish scene with like Marduk and Duffero. You should also listen to like LLN, like the raw black scene, and just because there's just so many ways to express this idea, and I think that sometimes the most interesting idea comes from a very unexpected place. Because, for example, like for me, I really don't like DSBM for the longest time because I think that I just got off with the wrong band. Because when I first listened to DSBM, there was a band called Sadness that was very popular. And I don't like that band at all. I think the thing that I hate about that band is that it's just so cheesy in the sense that it's so sentimental. But then I discovered bands like Bethlehem or Forgotten 2, or like especially like Steben and Nictasia, where they kind of treat the topic of sadness and loneliness, but not like, oh, I'm so sad. But they treat it as like a topic, as an onlooker, I think, in a way that they look at the sadness and they wish that upon people, something like that. But it's really interesting music for sure. So black metal is very fast, and there's many corners to discover.
We did mention DSBM a lot. People might think that this is a DSBM album.
I hope not. Disclaimer: Eternal Path Sweden is not a DSBM album. It's a black metal album. In the most purest sense that it incorporates every aspect of black metal into it. So yes. I think oftentimes for us we feel the need to kind of subcategorize ourselves. Like for example, like for the longest time I'm like, oh, Elcrost is like progressive gothic melodic black metal or some shit, but I think in the end it's black metal, and it's black metal our ways, and yeah,
Yeah, basically when we finish the writing process, I tend to like call ourselves like avant-garde black metal, but after that I'm just like let's just call it black metal.
yeah, it's just black metal.
Yeah.
You know.
And I feel like calling it avant-garde would be it might be an overstatement, but I think disrespect to our pioneers.
That's true.
If you listen to
I think that if you call it avant-garde, people would expect it to be like, I don't know, like Decibel Omega or something. Well, probably it's not. You guys are like the furthest away from Decibel Omega for sure. I would ask, like, what is like the starting point with playing music? Like, what is like the thing that makes you want to play your musical instruments? And also, what's like, the early influence?
Well, for me, my background is I did not actually come from metal at first. The first type of music I actually listened to were progressive rock and classic rock. So bands like King Crimson, Yes, Long, Gentle Giant, and not Renaissance.
Oh, nobody asked about Renaissance.
Yeah, there's Renaissance. Just kidding. And classic rock albums and bands like The Who, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I actually came to know metal quite, I would say, quite late. At least later than people in the West. The first black metal album that I had listened to is Memoria Vetusta 1 by Blood Aus North.
Which is a very interesting starting point if you listen to black metal.
Yeah, I would say because it contains elements of experimental, although not that much. And the first death metal album I came across was Dismember's Massive Killing something. Capacity. Massive Killing Capacity.
It's the Warhammer one.
It's robot.
Yeah, the robot with the chainsaw.
Yeah, but it's more of a death and roll album.
Yeah.
And I play bass because there's a progressive rock band that I really love, and I love that band till now, and that's Rush.
Oh, okay.
And I'm heavily influenced by Geddy Lee, the bassist. He made me want to pick up the bass. And for Leukotomy, the writing process for the bass, I'm heavily influenced by Geezer Butler, the bassist of Black Sabbath. So you notice that in a lot of Black Sabbath songs, the bass actually plays a different melody, and it's more prominent than the guitar.
Yeah.
And also at times the bass plays solo as well. I think it's because of Iomi's injury that he has to take a more technical route to his writing.
Yeah. I think his playing is like, it's kind of different to like usually. So you have like the bass is like the bass, and then the guitar will play the melody, right? But with Sabbath it's different because he would like Iomi would play like droning chords that create texture, like color tone, and then and then Geezer Butler would play the melody on top. And so he's like actually the lead player of that band. So that's quite interesting.
Iomi's playing is very rhythm heavy and not as much lead. Yeah. But that's some of my earliest influences.
Yeah, the progressive influence is interesting for sure because speaking from our experience of knowing each other, I actually know you first not because of metal, because I don't even know that you like metal, but I saw that you post a lot about Rush and King Crimson, and I think that that's cool because it's like finding young guys that like progressive rock. There's not many, but it's more trendier these days because of of forums and such. So people will listen to King Crimson like it's nothing, right? But to dig deeper, listen to stuff like Griffons or like ELP or those kind of band. There's not many people who actually do that. So I think that's actually quite interesting.
Yeah,
And I think that you also we also discussed once about albums like Mike Oldfield or those kind of progressive band as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also my writing, especially the bass,
Hmm.
it's not very influenced by black metal.
Yeah.
Uh, it's that I try to incorporate elements of other types of music into it.
Hmm.
There's a storm that you might want to read. It has a pretty, I would say, funky part,
Hmm.
and we did. Well, initially I did play it. I did not think it would work out, but somehow it blends. So
Hmm.
we decided to keep it.
And I think that coming back to the second wave story, so I heard a lot of interview and read a lot of interview about how the guys from that era discovered music, and usually it's very stark contrast where is you listen to metal or you listen to the new wave stuff, like Duran or those bands. But through
Yeah,
these kind of new wave band, they discover like punk rock and then post punk. And a
yeah,
lot of like the old black metal guys, for example, like Gam in particular, they like fans of the 480s band. They like fans of like goth rock, of like
yeah.
post punk, and some of the basses are influenced by the bass line that you found in Joy Divisions or Bauhaus or those kind of like post punk band.
It's like my hand because that
Hmm.
band had the members. They have very interesting
Hmm.
taste in music.
Yeah.
It's like I was very surprised when I first found out that Euronymous was actually into Pink Floyd and Tangerine Dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Necrobutcher actually enjoys Depeche Mode.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like they are very committed to the music they play, but they have the taste and the music preference of their own, which makes the character much more interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And Morbid, what is like your starting point when it comes to playing music and also consuming music?
Well, I was very into music for like, well, I mean, since I was like 3 or 4,
Yeah.
just I was into music, and I listened to a lot of different kinds of music. But as a starting point of playing music, it's actually back in 2012 when I first picked up the guitar, and I spent like 4 years practicing the guitar. Practicing classical guitar. Yes, yeah, classical music.
Yeah.
Yeah. But already back then, I was already into like rock music and even metal with bands like Avenged Sevenfold. So yeah, when I was 16, I picked up my first electric guitar, and I just started developing my skills in that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would say it's interesting that your starting point is like a like classically trained guitar, because learning them it kind of helps with your perception of melody a lot, and also with the finger picking playing, which is I still today cannot play that at all. Every time we have like a arpeggio section on Elcrost or finger picking, I always just delegate that to the other guitarists. Because like, can I just play like the tremolo, the easy part, please? And yeah, so I really like always admire when people say that they learn classical guitar, because it's in a way a very primordial kind of form of learning music, because you have like your guitar, but the guitar can also play as like a lead and also a rhythm instrument. And with classical, oftentimes you play both parts. You would have your like they would treat the guitar as the piano in a sense that you have like your bass notes and then you have your lead notes. So that is always very so do you think that so I think that also helps with your future like writing in Leukotomy, in the sense that you always have like the high part and then like the lower part as well, and those kind of like balance with each other, I would say.
Well, the thing that classical music influenced me a lot is the way of like making layers of instruments
Yeah.
blend together, but also like sounds differently
Hmm.
to into like a song.
Hmm. Yeah.
In terms of black metal, discovered black metal when I was like 16, yeah.
Mm.
And I was a generic kind of listener, so yeah, my first album was The Mysterious Dome Satanas by Mayhem.
Mm.
Yeah, pretty.
Dome Satanas. If you start with that, right, it's actually a very hard place to start because I think when people start with black metal, of course, they can listen to everything, but the thing that people latch onto black metal is the punky, easier listening part. That's why I think a lot of people like Dark Thrones or more because it's easier to listen to. Or they'll listen to like the early Burzum stuff because it's just easier to the ears. In terms of like music wise, not sonic wise, because those albums are very badly produced. But Mayhem, in a way, it's kind of hard to pinpoint because it sounds harsh. It's very atonal. It's full of minor chords. So there's not a lot of things to latch onto if you are like a new listener. But I always, consider Mayhem to be like of those second wave bands to be like the best band because of that quality, in the sense that they're not, like discounted Celtic Frost like Dark Throne, or they're not, like atmospheric and kind of lengthy and tedious like Burzum in a sense. Yeah. So, but you are also very into the shred guitars and the virtuoso kind of guitars.
So basically, that's I've always had my thing for classical music.
Mm.
So when I found out that the genre called neoclassical neoclassical metal, and yeah, I was very into that, and I've been practicing songs, yeah, since that discovery. And yeah, I would name drop Jason Becker as one of my biggest influence.
Yeah. Jason Becker, I think the only thing that I know about him is that he did the cacophony, right? That's his project with like
Cacophony was multi-treatment, yeah. And he also have a lot of, he has 3 solo albums which were very influential.
Yeah.
His life story is also very influential since, yeah, as we all know that he suffered with ALS since he was like 20.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's very sad in a way because both him and Martin Freeman has a lot of perspective, right? And Martin Freeman was playing for Megadeth, and Jason Becker actually got a chance to tour and play for David Lee Roth in his solo album. And they were supposed to be like make it big, right? But then of course he only played for David Lee Roth for I think a short time before he succumbed completely to ALS and then granted him completely to play. So that was very, very tragic.
Basically, the story is Jason Becker is younger than Martin Freeman, and he did me rock first, like before Marty. So yeah, Marty did say that at the time he was very jealous of Jason, and after that he got a gig with Megadeth, which is pretty big as well. Basically, Jason only got a chance to record the album A Little Ain't Enough with David Rock, and then he were actually he would actually with ALS during the recording. So basically he like switch to like very large string gauge DSs. So and yeah, that was his story, I guess.
So when you listen to these neoclassical albums, do you feel like there's a difference between each players in a sense that because I think to a lot of people it's like the same generic noodling, right? But I think that a lot of players has like different use of like the guitar and different sense of melodies. So like
different sense of melody.
Yeah.
But like you can very much differentiate between like Ingrid Malmsteen or Jason Becker, like a different like big guy of like neoclassical music. Just by listening to they'll different the way they phrasing, the scale choices, and and overall the technique. Like Ingrid love to very fast melodic scale alternate picking, while Jason is famous for his quick picking.
Yeah, and I think the sweep picking part is influenced you the most, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Because on the Eternal Path 3, then there's a lot of very lengthy sweep picking sections. Like I think that
almost every time I did a guitar solo, I have a sweep picking part.
yeah. But so I think that's really cool, and it also I think kind of influenced by not influenced by like visual K or J rock, but it's actually also like the sense of melody also influenced by X Japan in the sense. Right? Are you a fan of those kind of music?
Yeah, I love Japan, and I do listen to like J-rock a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that with those kind of band, they also have like a very like power metal in Japan, right? They also have like a very different sense of melody there as well, and the way that they treat power metal in a way that is very weirdly, like not how like European treat it or American like power metal sounds. It sounds different.
It sounds very different. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your current obsession? As you said before, your path to extreme metal, but like currently, what is the thing that you guys listen to the most? Or what's like yeah. Or what is like the genres that like or the subgenres of extreme metal that interest you the most lately?
Don, you can go first.
Lately, like these days.
Yeah, like like within the last year, I would say.
Within the last year, well, I will go with these days first. So I'm trying to find the roots of and understand the roots of hardcore music, but not like metalcore bands like Asking Alexandria, not that kind of hardcore, but it's actually old school hardcore.
Yeah.
So bands like recently I'm digging into the UK 82 movement. It's the hardcore punk originated in the UK. Bands like The Exploited, GBH.
Okay.
Yeah, bands like that. And I also listen to these days a lot of hardcore London music as well. And so bands like Die Fetus, a very groovy death metal band with core hardcore influence. Carnivore, I love the first album, really good, and especially Boom Rock these days.
Yeah. Although, what is your thought on the latest Wormrod album?
I think it's on the first listen, I think it's too lengthy and cheese. But the more I listen to it, I think it's the best they have put out this year. It maintains a very high sense of melodic sensibility and very asphyxiating as well.
Yeah.
And what I love it is the hardcore influence. It's transparent in the record. I also have the opportunity to watch Wormrod live, and it's kind of crazy.
But with the fill-in vocalist, right? The Gabriel Darko or something.
Yeah, I think that I'm maybe we are too accustomed to Arif.
Yeah, I think we all kind of accustomed to, or we expect Arif to be there, but sadly he's not.
Yeah. So Gabriel's vocals seems to be a little bit flat, but overall, great experience.
Yeah.
Over the last year, well, I have listened to some new records last year. Pretty cool. In terms of metal, I would say Voivod and Immolation. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Especially Immolation, because actually I have always considered that band to be one of the first bands to actually break out from the thrash metal formula and when full-fledged death metal with their, I think, sophomore album, Hereinafter. Well, they have this trademark guitar type playing of depending on pinch harmonics, a lot of pinch harmonics in the riff. And,
Yeah.
I would say that their last year albums, while not as good as the previous ones, but a cleanly produced emulation is surprisingly enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and about the Wormrod one, I just feel like, for me, I have the opposite reaction where I really like it at first, but the more I listen to it, the more I hate it. The more I feel like it's just so unfocused, unlike Dirge or Voices, I think. Like, I can see that it's a band trying to break out, but at the same time, I just feel incoherent in that sense, I think.
Yeah, well, in number, I would feel like albums of Views and Dirge would fit most of your liking because it's very concentrated type of grindcore, very crusty, good production. Yeah, a point is that I think this album is the production is might be too polished, and the melodic elements maybe it's kind of a lot. It's the they still maintain this kind of abrasive sound in their albums, but not as much as the previous ones. Maybe that's it could be very not very, but it could be disrupting at times. I guess.
So, and Morbid, I actually want to before you say it about your current obsessions, I know that you're like a Japanese black metal aficionado, right? And have you listened to the newest Kanashimi album?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's quite interesting to see the collab between like Kanashimi, like Misanthropy, and like Kek Arak.
Yeah, they did that one song together, like the last song of the album, right? Yeah.
The lyrics is written by Kek Arak, and it was sang by Misanthropy. Yeah.
Actually,
the album,
yeah. Continue.
The album is, when it came out, it actually like captured my attention at first because the entire album was produced and mixed by the guy from Angus Day, actually. So Angus Day is one of my favorite Japanese black metal band. So yeah, I was pretty interested. But in terms of the songwriting and the production, to be honest, I would prefer his previous work, like The Inery. I mean, the album with Scar Park.
Yeah. I listened to it and I liked the songwriting, but I didn't like the mixing because it's to me one of those fuzzy DSBM records where it's kind of fuzz out in a sense that's why I don't like it much, I think. But
I hate what Ultimate Entropy did with the vocal on that record.
Yeah.
Like if you compare to like the previous work, like with Romantic Suicide or Ivory, I think his vocal was like mix and like sang better back then. Very airy, very very high register, and yeah. Or I just prefer the old ones better. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is like your current obsessions as of late?
Like in past year?
I would say yeah, in the past year, but not necessarily. That doesn't have to be album from the last year, but like what things that you've been listening to a lot lately.
Yeah, to be honest, lately I listen to like a lot of like Swedish black metal, Morbid or Battery. I also listen to Gehenna. I love that keyboard. I do listen to a lot of thrash. I must say Slayer. Yeah. And I have to shout out to a band from the south of Vietnam, which is Rock. They amazing album last year.
Yeah, As Darkness Burns. Yeah, dude. I wanted to talk about it a bit. I think for all of us, I mean, because we all know the band members personally, like because the scene is small, so we are the band members are close friends with us, and I personally also produced the album, but so it's a bit impartial and a bit unbiased, or a bit biased to say. But I remember when the album drops, at least for us as fans, it feels like a big thing. It feels like an era coming to an end because like I don't know about you guys, but I was in the scene a bit longer. I was in the scene since 2014. So as then I already know about Rocks and I know about their stories, right? And waits like nearly 9 years to get to the point where I was a fan to helping them putting that album out. It was very surreal. And I remember that that day they had a show in Saigon, right? So we will all like gather at my place as like a listening party, and we just sit and listen to the albums, and then we just go out and then just sit in the pavement and watch like the live stream, not live stream, but like watch the update the news about the show in Saigon. And so I mean like I of course like know that the reception for that album across the pond from worldwide is really good, really positive. But within the scene, it was muted. So I was very disappointed by that. I think except for us, like because we're like close friend with them, and we're also really huge fan of the music. So we went crazy for it, right? But it was interesting to see that it finally released for sure. Yeah, and I really love that album as well. I think the best thing is that I can take myself out as the role of a producer and listen to that album. And I think that's something that I hope that you guys can also do with Leukotomy or an album as well, where you can take yourself out as the musician and forget about the 3 years that took to make it, and then listen to album and enjoy it in its own merit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you say that like Swedish black metal, you mean like the dissections or Marduk or those kind of band, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do listen to them a lot. I actually like personally I prefer Swedish death metal, Swedish black metal to like the Norwegian guys. Yeah, personally.
Yeah. I think it's actually kind of developed simultaneously in a sense that it all comes from death metal. But then
Yeah.
yeah. With Marduk, I really like Marduk, and I think that there's some other bands from that Swedish Black Death scene that is also interesting, like Dissections, or there's also like there's also like a lot of bands within the Death Black spectrum, like Niflheim or Dawn,
Yeah.
yeah, and Necrophobic as well. Lately, I also really enjoy Necrophobic, and with death and black melodic death black, there's also tons of band like Gates of Ishtars, and like there's a band called Deface, I think that plays like a black thrash kind of style. That is also interesting in the Swedish scene.
Yeah. Yeah, like since we're talking about black trash, yeah, I would need to mention that word, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the godfather of two genres. Yeah.
Yeah, but
In a way.
in a way, I don't think
In a way.
that he's the godfather of.
Because early Battery, I would argue it's more influenced by
Venom.
punk. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So it was very heavily influenced by punk.
Crosson would do a lot of like revisions. Like he would often say shit that contradict his past interviews. So I'm not so sure.
Yeah. What?
I mean, he also stated that I think his music turns out to be that way because of his limited ability as a musician back then.
Yeah.
Because I think that his vision to his music is much more than that.
Yeah.
But his ability only allowed him to do such things. But somehow it turns out to be I would say, prototype of black metal these days.
I also think one reason why is that Cawthon actually hates the second wave guys, and he wants to distance himself as much as possible from those guys.
You have heard the story of like Dead Meat Cawthon?
No, I think I heard it, but then I just don't remember.
That story of Dead Meat Cawthon in a like fan meeting, like signing. Yeah. So Dad was very into like bathroom music, and he was kind of idolized Cawthon. But when he met Cawthon in person, he was like, "Man, this man's a poser." he said that Cawthon was acting like a superstar or something.
Yeah.
Pretty sure the relationship between like Cawthon and the guys on the second wave scene is shaky.
Yeah, I think like second wave guys also, because we look back and we if we just look at them in like the bubbles of second wave guys, it's cool, right? It's very revolutionized, but I think I cannot imagine what the global scene in general thinks of the second wave back then, because I know for sure that bands like DSI or Morbid Angel just flat out don't like, they just didn't give a shit about the second wave guys. Yeah. And you guys have played multiple shows throughout, the year, and you guys have also experienced several lineup changes as well. So can you give us like a brief kind of rundowns about your current lineup as a band, and some of the experience that you gained from playing all these shows?
Well, back when we were formed, back when Leukotomy was formed, John and I never started playing live, actually. Because, he was in Germany and I was in Vietnam, and we only had 2 members. But, in 2022, early that year, we had the chance to play live in the first ever show hosted by House of Eva. The guys encouraged us to play live, so we have to find section members to play. So at first we gathered a lineup including me, Morbid, Don, a guy named Guillotine, who is known by Long from Rock, a young drummer and a young keyboardist named Acne and Zayden, respectively. So we play Match 1 with that lineup. After that, we have a long break, like 7 months, to focus on the recording process.
Yeah.
John had to leave for Germany. Acme had to leave because of his personal issues. So we found 2 other members, who is Capre on drums and Upheaval on bass. We've been playing with that lineup ever since.
Yeah. And I would say that it's interesting because most of the shows that you guys play are shows that I also organize, right? And from my perspective as an onlooker, it's really interesting to see how the band grow through all these shows, because there was a stretch of I think 3 or 4 months towards the end of last year where you guys play shows every month. The first shows at Hubgraph, which is like a small venue, was a bit shaky. But then Mass 3 came and it was great. And then you have your shows this January where I just feel like everything just come together in a very cool sense. And not just the band plays tighter together, but since you are like the songwriters, right? So and you are like the main guy behind Leukotomy, in the band, in this lineup, then there's nothing to complain. And then like Guillotine, he is also like a very seasonal player, so he's solid, right? But to see the younger members like Upheaval, who's actually not that young, he's actually old. Like he's actually age. Yeah. But I mean, like inexperience in terms of extreme metal, like him to come together and be more confident in his playing, and to see young guys, like actual young guys, like Capria, who basically is a jazz drummer, who has no prior experience with extreme metal, and his progress of him playing, focusing on and enjoy the music, and you can see them enjoying it. And of course, I think like the one who improved the most and really get into this is Vaden. To see him from the first show that you guys did like last March until like these latest shows, he really embraced that role as the keyboardist, one of the few keyboardists of the scene, right? And he really gets into the music, and I'm just amazed by how he constantly tried to like renovate his technique and sound. Like he just sent me some sound demo today, be like, what do you think? And it's like, that's great. That sounds like some Climbonic art shit, man. So yeah, I mean, it's just amazing that how the progress of the band comes together at that point. Yeah, and so we are as we start to wind down now. Do you guys have any personal projects that is like upcoming, or have anything that in the work after this album?
In secrecy.
Yeah, in secrecy. So you cannot say. So Morbid, anything like news upcoming for Leukotomy?
Yeah, I think we do have a plan in hand for the next release, but I can't say yet.
Yes, that's great. And what's your plan for this year?
I think we will continue to work on those materials and work on more materials, of course, and maybe new live.
Yeah.
Here and then.
Yeah, that's great. And oh, actually, there's one more question that I want to ask. So we are living in a very interesting time, where in the past we often talk about, oh, what would happen if we have a scene? What would happen if we have like something to work towards to? But I think that we are living in that time where we actually have a black metal scene or an extreme metal scene in Hanoi, no matter how small it is. But it functions as a scene because there are new bands, there are new music, and bands actively reach outside of the border to meet with like our neighbors in Southeast Asia, and or to tip trade basically globally. So in the past, I would often ask you guys, what do you think about the scene of the past? But I would want to ask you guys, what do you feel like now that we're living in the scene? Like, what do you think, like, how it affects, I don't know, like, how do you feel about it now that we actually have a scene here in Hanoi?
John?
Well, I think it's a good thing that there's a scene arising in Hanoi. I think it's also a good thing that people are putting out new music.
A backroom guitarist who doesn't give a shit about anything around me. Well, I do think since now I'm in the scene, I do feel like this scene is very promising. It can really grow. And the way bands interact, the way bands continue to put out new music really helps the scene to grow.
Yeah. So, any final departing words?
It's like an announcement again that our debut album will come out through Morbid and all streaming platforms on March 17th. So give us a listen if you are into black metal music. Give us support if you really like it, and give Imperial cult special words of admiration and care, because he needs it after a year of working.
Yes.
That's all we can say, yes. And while you're at it, you might want to wait for upcoming projects from House of Ikra.
Yeah. And Morbid?
Yeah, Eternal Past Demon will be out everywhere via House of Ikra on March 17th?
Yes.
17th. please give it a check, guys.
Yeah, and I would also want to say that I'm glad that we pulled through. It's between three of us. It's been a long ride to produce this album, and I'm glad that we took the time. But it's long as hell, and goddamn, finally it's coming out next week. So I hope that everybody check it out. It's a very long album, very informative, very lengthy album, but it's a very interesting album for sure. And I'm proud of you guys to pull through finally, and happy to see the result. That I'm very happy to see that you guys can see the result of your work finally being put on, like out there. So thank you all for coming to this special podcast. Thank you all of you who listened to it, and don't forget that it's coming out next week, March 27th. March 17th. Sorry. Eternal Path to Eden, Leukotomy, with CD versions coming soon in the future, near future, to be announced soon. And thank you all for support Leukotomy. Thank you all for support House of Igra. Good night.